शृण्ववादी पश्चादेशतारणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पुंगं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दं माधवम्. So today we start a new chapter, 21, and the title of this chapter is The Movements of the Sun. So this is essentially the concluding part of the Vedic cosmology. So 21, 22, 23, 24. So these four chapters are about the movement of movement of the sun, movement of the planets, movement in the Shishumara. So they are essentially talking about the dynamic aspect of the universe, and it's probably one of the more difficult things to grasp. The topology of the universe one can grasp. The movement is a little bit more difficult, but nevertheless it's important because through the movements, because the topology is what it is. You have to take it for on faith, but the movement is what is going to ratify the Vedic model, because through the movement one gets seasons, through the movement one gets day and night, through the movements one gets eclipses, and those are things that can be observed and validated, right? So that's why Sukadeva Goswami, after describing the structure of the universe, he talks about the movement, and through that he explains the occurrence of the various observable phenomena. As you know, earlier on we discussed that while the Vedic knowledge is descending and accepted on faith, but Jiva Goswami makes this point that the faith needs to be at some point validated. So even though we kind of deprecate Pratyaksh Praman, but to validate Shraddha, Pratyaksh Praman is also important. Like you're given on the value of faith that chanting of the holy name will liberate you, and you accept that on faith. But then when you start chanting, you should experience a change in heart. You should experience that you're lesser prone to the pangs of material fluctuations. If all that is not happening, then how will you validate the other parts of the chanting, which says that it will take you back to Godhead? And factually speaking, that's why when you talk about chanting of the holy name, there are also these things, even though these things are considered to be material and the holy name is spiritual, but these benefits are also stated there so that the practitioner gets empirical verification. One thing that we have to keep in mind is now, in almost all these chapters, Prabhupada has almost no purports. In this chapter, he has some purports, but they're mostly glorifying purports. Next chapter, I think in all, it has 17 verses. I think only 3 verses are purports there. And the reason is that Prabhupada understands that it's difficult to explain by words, which is why he put a lot of stress on his disciples to build um, uh, visual models, because that's the only way one can grasp it. Now, Sukadeva Goswami and Parishar Maharaj were both exalted souls, so Sukadeva Goswami could speak and Parishar Maharaj could understand. But for us, perhaps that's not the most efficient way. And I said that at least for the sake of completeness, we'll do this verse, and then later on we will look at the PowerPoint presentations where these things are laid out more in a more visual way. Another thing also, well, two more things I want to say before we start this. One is that it'll be good for you to kind of set aside everything that you have heard about the um, uh, the astronomy. Things like the earth moves around the sun and the planets are all revolving around the sun, that the day and night are caused because of the spinning of the earth, and the year is caused because of the revolving of the earth around the orbit. Um, uh, we could try and reconcile the Vedic model with that, but beyond the scope of the current discussion. But the point is that everything that we observe can also be fully explained by the Vedic model. And so, even though it's not a sufficient condition, but it is a necessary condition that the model is consistent. Right. So one of the things that is said that the reason that scientific model draws um, so much of faith is that somehow they're able to maintain the semblance of consistency. Right. So does not mean it's truth. Right. If you go to a room and 10 people are saying the same thing, does not mean that the 10 people are speaking the truth. It just means that they're consistent. But if those 10 people are not consistent, you know for sure that the truth is not being spoken in that room, right? So the Vedic model is able to describe these activities or these occurrences with a lot of consistency, and that is, like I said, it's a necessary condition for it to be truthful. That yes, it stands the test of consistency. The second thing is that when we describe the Bhumandal, we described it as a plane, as a disk, that is a plane disk. And with a plain flat disk, it is not possible to describe all the natural phenomena. So, Srila Vadiraj Tirtha, he was a famous Vedic scholar, and he wrote the book called Bhugol Varnam. It's a famous book, and in which he talks about the fact that Bhumandal is actually a terraced model. So, what does terraced mean? It means that in the middle there is Jambudweep. Then around Jambudweep, at a little bit depression, is the Palakshadweep. Then below Palakshadweep, at a little bit depression is the Shalmali Dweep. So the seven dweeps are staggered like this. So they are not like this. So by the time you reach to Pushkar Dweep, it's almost 100,000 yojanas below Jambu Dweep. And that staggering helps us also understand the effect of the sun. This is not explicitly given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but then it is explained as in the supplementary books. Okay, so verse 1. Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, I have thus far described the diameter of the universe, 50 crores of yojanas or 4 billion miles, and its general characteristics according to the estimations of learned scholars." Right? So he is now referring to the previous chapter where Sukadeva Goswami described the horizontal cross-section of the universe, the Bhumandal, and then he spoke about the upper planetary system. Very briefly, he spoke about them. But the main takeaway point is the fact that the diameter of the universe is 50 million yojanas or 4 billion miles. Okay, next verse. As a grain of wheat is divided into two parts, and one can estimate the size of the upper part by knowing that of the lower, so expert geographers instruct. One can understand the measurement of the upper part of the universe by knowing those of the lower part. The sky between the earthly sphere and the heavenly sphere is called Antariksha or outer space. It adjoins the top of the sphere of earth and the bottom of that of heaven. Okay. So just like the example is given, just like a bean seed has two parts, and then following the rules of symmetry, if one knows the dimensions of one part, one can reduce the dimensions of the other. So similarly, uh, uh, the Bhumandal, it covers the lower part of the universe, right? So the Bhumandal is floating on the Garbhodaka ocean, and within the Bhumandal are the lower seven planetary system. And because the universe is spherical, one can now understand that the upper part of the universe also looks like the lower part, right? If the universe was asymmetrical, then that assumption cannot be made. But because the point originally was made that it is spherical, so one can reduce the dimensions for the upper part of the universe. Now, one thing we'll also see that the descriptions of the universe, they will become more and more vague as we move away from the Earth planet. So, so in the description so far, Sukhdev Goswami does not speak so much about Earth planet because so he's looking at the audience. So, if somebody is describing a city to a person, he's not going to describe his own house. The person lives in the house, he knows it very well. So, Sukdev Goswami does not speak too much about the Earth planet, but he does speak in fair amount of details about Jambudvip. More than any other Dvipa, he speaks a fair amount of details about Jambudvip, the horizontal and vertical mountains, the areas between them, um, all the regions, the Dvipas that are between there, the nature of the people living over there. So he talks about fair amount of details about Jambudvip because it is adjoining the Earth planet, right? So of direct interest. Then as he expands out into the Bhumandal, his description becomes very perfunctory. He basically will talk he has talked at just what is the size of the Dvipa, what is the ocean adjoining to it. He also talks about the name of the four Varnas that live over there. He'll talk about one discerning characteristic of it. In some cases, Kusha grass. In some case, it's a river. That's it, right? The same thing also happens when he moves vertically. So for the upper four planetary system, like from Brahmalok and Tapalok and Janalok and Mahalok, he does not even talk about the dimensions. He just mentions that they are there. So we don't know whether they span the entire width of the universe or whether they are concentrated into smaller, how deep they are. He just mentioned that there are four planets. For Dhruva Lok, he gives a little bit of more details, mainly because it's important for astronomical purpose, but doesn't speak a lot even about the heavenly planets. Right? He just mentions it here. So, in terms of the lokas, so we know that there are 14 lokas, right? There are 7 that are subterranean, and there are 7 that are up. And amongst the 7 that are up, the lowest is Bhulok. So there are 6 above that. So right above Bhulok is Bhuvarlok, and right above Bhuvarlok is Svargalok, and above Svargalok are the 4 upper planetary system: Maharlok, Janlok, Tapalok, and Satyalok. So what this verse is saying is that the area between Bhulok and Bhuvarlok is called Antariksh. So Antariksh is the space between Bhulok and Bhuvarlok. So the Bhulok essentially is the surface of the Bhumandal. And technically speaking, what is described in some of the other is that the Bhulok extends till where the eagles can fly. Right? So Bhulok is not just the surface of the earth, but they say that till the height that the eagles can fly is where Bhulok exists. Beyond that, there is a space. and after that is Bhuvarlok. Now, Bhuvarlok is occupied by the celestial creatures like the Gandharvas and the Apsaras and the Vidyadharas. Now, the space between them is 200,000 yojanas and is called Antariksha or outer space. And this is where the sun exists, which is why Sukdev Goswami is talking about it. Okay, so moving to the verse 3. In the midst of the region of outer space, Antariksh is the most opulent sun, the king of all the planets that emanate heat, such as the moon. By the influence of its radiation, the sun heats the universe and maintains its proper order. It also gives light to help all living entities see. While passing towards north, towards the south, or through the equator, in accordance with the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is said to move slowly, swiftly, or moderately. According to its movements in rising above, going beneath, or passing through the equator, and correspondingly coming in touch with various signs of the zodiac headed by Makar, Capricorn, days and nights are short, long, or equal to one another. So this is a fairly packed verse, and with Sukdev Goswami, he introduces many concepts over here. So one is, where is the sun located? It is located in the middle of Antariksh, 100,000 yojanas. So one thing we understand is that the sun is not in Svargalok. So generally we say that the sun is a heavenly planet. It's actually not even in Bhuvarlok. It's below the below the heavenly planets, below Bhuvarlok. It's in the area of Antariksh. But nevertheless, it is worshipped as a heavenly planet because of the special position that has been given to it. So just in terms of the location, the sun is the lowest heavenly body above Bhulok. So higher than the sun is Bhuvarlok, where you see the planets of these personalities, the Gandharvas and Apsaras, etc. Higher than that is Svargalok, where you see the planets of Brahaspati and Shukracharya and Indra. And then above that are the four higher planets. So the lowest is the sun, and right above the sun is moon. So the moon is actually the lowest planet in Svargalok. Right? The moon is another 100,000 yojanas above the sun. So actually it's the lowest planet in Bhuvarloka. There, but again, it is worshipped as a heavenly planet because of its special position. So that's why Prabhupada will sometimes say that the sun is closer to the earth than the moon. And people would say, how's that possible? And the reason it's possible is that if you look at it from a vertical perspective, then the sun is 100,000 yojanas above Bhumandal, and the moon is 200,000 yojanas. But if you look at it from a horizontal perspective, the sun is much farther away. It's 15.7 million yojanas. And the moon, I forget what, but it is much closer. So it moves on a higher plane, but in a shorter circle. And the sun moves in a lower plane, but in a much wider circle. So yes, if you look at the radial distance, the sun is farther away than the moon. If you look at it from a vertical distance, the sun is closer than the moon. Now, another point that is made over here is that while passing towards north or south or equator, the days become long and short. Now, the question here is that the sun is moving in a plane. And so you visualize this, right? That there is an heavenly body that is moving in a plane, which means that the movement will always be east-west. So where is the question of north-south? Because the north-south only exists on a vertical axis, right? So if you're spinning something in a horizontal axis, then what's the question of saying that now it's entering north or now it's entering south? And Sukdev Goswami mentions here never fully explains it, but it gets explained in other books, that actually the sun also moves on a vertical plane. So not only does it move horizontally, it also moves up and down. And that's why we have the Uttarayan and the Uttarayan, which is the sun entering north, which means that now the sun is starting to move north. And then at some point the sun stops moving north and moves down south, and then that's when the Dakshayan occurs, right? So it's a fairly complex movement, but we will study it. Now, this is contrary, which is why I said it's good for you to kind of put the contemporary and the material understanding aside. This is contrary to what we understand, where we say that the sun is stationary and the earth moves around it, right? So essentially what Sukdev Goswami is saying, the Bhumandal is static. Bhumandal does not move, right? The Dhruv Tara is static. The Dhruv Tara does not move. So these are the two static poles. The Bhumandal does not move, and the Dhruv Tara and everything above the Dhruv Tara are static. Only the region between Bhumandal and Dhruv Tara is rotating. And that rotation is known as the Kal Chakra. Right. So we should get that picture clear in our mind, that now, even though the Dhruv Tara is not moving, but it is spinning. Right? So it is anchored in a position, but nevertheless it is spinning. The Bhumandal, however, does not even spin. It's just stationary. It just lies there. So the Earth planet, which is on the Bhumandal, it's anchored there. There is no horizontal movement, there is no vertical movement, there is no circular movement. They're completely static. And the spinning of the Dhruv planet causes the Kal Chakra. That causes the movement of all the bodies between Dhruva Lok and Bhumandal. Right. So that model is there, and sun is one of the luminaries here. So we established that this is how the sun is moving. We established the sun also moves on a vertical plane, and the movement in the vertical plane causes the days and the nights to go shorter and longer. Third point that is made over here is that the sun moves through the zodiacs. And zodiacs we are all very familiar with, that there are 12 zodiacs, the Aries and the Taurus and Gemini, and each one of them is lasting for a month, right? And so the sun takes about a month to travel through a zodiac. And so we can visualize the zodiac as a circle of heavenly bodies through which the sun travels. And every month, the sun exits one set of this heavenly bodies and enters into another one. So it's known as Ayan. So these heavenly bodies are considered to be static with respect to the sun, because in the earlier point I said that everything between Dhruv Tara and Bhumandal is moving, but now we are saying that the sun is moving with respect to the zodiac, right? So what it means is not everything is moving at the same speed. And we'll talk a little bit about the differential, but at least Sukdev Goswami puts this point here so that we understand that not everything is moving with the same speed. That is, we have relative motion. That's why we have the sun traveling through the various houses of the zodiac. So during its time in Aries and Libra, the sun it travels at a medium speed, giving the days and nights an equal length. And then from Capricorn to Gemini, it is known as Uttarayan. And from Cancer to Sagittarius, it is known as Dakshayan. So during Uttarayan, the sun moves slowly, making the days longer. So when we say that the sun moves slowly, so you know that speed is equal to distance upon time, right? So essentially what happens is that because the distance has increased, the speed has because the distance has reduced, the speed has reduced during that time. And because of the tilting of the sun, so instead of moving in a circle, it's moving in an eclipse. Because of the tilting, sometimes the distance will be less and sometimes the distance will be more. So during Uttarayan, the sun moves slowly, means the distance has reduced. And during Dakshayan, during Uttarayan, what happens is that the days are longer and the nights are shorter. And after Dakshayan, the opposite happens. The sun moves quickly, and so the days are shorter and the night is longer. Now it's easier for us to visualize also, right? So when are the days going to be long? When the sun is moving slowly. That means the sun hangs around for a longer time, right? So it's giving us a longer day. And when does the sun move slowly? The sun moves slowly during Uttarayan. Okay, so in the purport, Prabhupada quotes the glory of the sun, ya chakshuresh savita sakala granam, and to say that how the sun is dependent on the Lord. Yeah, so the sun is considered to be the eye of the Lord, in the sense that the sun is seeing everything and reporting back to the Lord. So because Krishna is busy doing other things, so he has asked the sun to keep an eye on everything. So it's not that the sun is the eye of Krishna, because then the question would happen that what happens to Krishna's eye when the sun is not there, when the universe is not created? What happens to Krishna's eye, right? So it's not that the sun is Krishna's eye, but it's like it's like a king basically calls one of his minister and says, you go to that kingdom, keep an eye and report back to me. So that minister is essentially the eye of the kingdom. So actually what happens is that not only the sun, but there are other demigods, they keep an eye mostly on Bharatvarsha, and they report back to Dhruvloka. So they report to Dhruvloka, and then Dhruvloka, this the whole thing of karma is decided over there. And from there, the karma goes into, and there, this whole prarabdha and aprarabdha karma happens over there. Okay, next verse. When the sun passes through Mesha, Aries, and Tula, Libra, the durations of day and night are equal. When it passes through the 5 signs headed by Vrishab, Taurus, the duration of the day increases until Cancer and then gradually decreases by half an hour each month until day and night again become equal in Libra. So between Mesha, which is March 21st, and Tula, which is September 23rd, the days and nights are equal. And in Vrishab, which is Taurus, and Mithun, that is Gemini, the days become longer and they gradually decrease by half an hour every month until they are equal in Libra. Okay, next verse 5. When the sun passes through the 5 signs begin with Vrishik, Scorpio, the duration of the days decreases until Capricorn, and then gradually it increases month after month until day and night become equal in Aries. And so there are in both in Libra and Aries, which are opposite to one another, the uh, days and the nights are equal, and between them they are either increasing or decreasing. Verse 6. Until the sun travels to the south, the days grow longer, And until it travels to the north, the nights grow longer. Right. So basically, what it means is when it is traveling in the north, then the days are longer because until it travels to the south. So while it is traveling in the north, the days grow longer. Why? Because the sun is moving slower. And the opposite for when it is going in the south. Verse 7. Sukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, as stated before, the learned say that the sun travels over all sides of Mount Manasotra, all sides of Manasotra mountain in a cycle whose length is 95.1 million yojanas or 760.8 million miles. On Manasotra mountain, due east of Mount Sameru, is a place known as Devadhani, possessed by King Indra. Similarly, in the south is a place known as Samyamani, possessed by Yamraj. In the west is a place known as Nimlochani, possessed by Varun. And in the north is a place named Vibhavari, possessed by the moon god. Sunrise, midday, sunset, and midnight occur in all those places according to specific times, thus engaging all living entities in their various occupational duties and also making them cease such duties. So until the sun travels to the south, right, Dakshinayan, the days are becoming longer and the night shorter. And until the sun travels to the north, which is Uttarayan, the days become shorter and the nights longer. Now, in the Bhumandal, in the middle is Mount Sumeru, and then we have this 7 Dvipas. The outermost Dvipa is the Pushkar Dvipa. And in the middle of Pushkar Dvipa, so the Pushkar Dvipa is like a circular ring. In the middle of Pushkar Dvipa is the Manasotra mountain. The radius of some Manasotra mountain is 15.75 million yojanas. So horizontally, that's how far the sun is from the Mount Sumeru. So vertically, it is only 100,000 yojanas above, but horizontally, it is 15.75 million yojanas. So based on that, Sukadeva Goswami is saying that the circumference, which essentially is 2 pi r, is 95.1 million yojanas. Now, one thing you'll also notice is that at least in the Bhagavatam and in most of the Vedas, pi is considered to be 3. So that's why you'll see that there is approximation. And the reason again is that the purpose of this is not to give exact dimensions, right? We want to say 3.14, whatever. So if you do the maths, then 15.75 compared to 95.1, so it comes out to be very close to the with pi being 3. Now, Sukadeva Goswami is describing the heavenly abodes on Manasotra Mount, right? So on the east, Indra lives. So this is east with respect to Mount Meru being in the middle. On the east is Devadhani, where Indra lives. In the south is Samyamni, where Yamaraj lives. In the west is Nimlochani, where Varuna lives. And in the north is Soma, where Vibhavari lives. So the Prabhupada, another point, explains that these are like summaries. These are not the primary residence of the Devas. Just like he says, rich people have houses everywhere. They may have a house on a beach, and like Prem Kishore has a house in Orlando now. He's living there. So different personalities, they have different houses. So they have their own sun, moon, and all. They have their own abode. But they also have these houses. So they will go there for celebration, or not clear why they go, but they go once in a while there. So, so these are used also as landmarks that that when the sun is on the east of Sumeru, then east of Sumeru is midday. And so Sukadeva Goswami is trying to explain the passage of days now, right? So he's saying when the sun is on the east of Sumeru, it is midday in the east because the sun is directly on the east. On the west, it is midnight. In the south, it is sunrise, and in the north, it is sunset, right? And then you can rotate it. And when the sun is in the west, then the west it is midday, and east it is midnight, north it is sunrise, south it is sunset. So that way you can rotate it. So because of this movement of the sun with respect to the center of the Bhumandal is the passage of the day happening. That whichever part of the Bhumandal that has the sun on top of it, that part is midday. And the diametrically opposite of it is midnight. And then north of it is north and south are sunrise and sunset there, right? So now with this four dimensional axis, as the sun rotates, then from midday it will become a few minutes after midday, 1 hour after midday, and the midnight will become a few hours after midnight. So the days will change there. So the passage of the day is not because of the moving of the earth, but because of the moving of the sun around Mount Sumeru. Okay, let's see. Okay, verses 8 and 9. The living entities residing on Sumeru mountain are always very warm as at midday, because for them the sun is always overhead. Although the sun moves counterclockwise facing the constellations, with Sumeru on its left, it also moves clockwise and appears to have mountain on its right because it is influenced by the Dakshinavrat wind. People living in countries that points diametrically opposite to where the sun is first seen rising will see the sun setting. And if a straight line was drawn from a point where the sun is at midday, people in the countries at the opposite end of that will be experiencing midnight. Similarly, people residing where the sun is setting were to go to countries diametrically opposite, they would see the sun in the same condition. So Mount Sumeru is an exception because it is right at the center. So it always experiences middays. So regardless of wherever the sun is, it is shining on Mount Sumeru, right? Now the second point that Sukadeva Goswami makes, and again this verse is even though it's a one statement, but it's a little involved to explain. So Sukadeva Goswami says that although the sun moves anti-clockwise relative to the constellations, so we talked about the constellations, and then we said that how the sun is moving from one constellation to another. So the movement of the sun through the constellation is anti-clockwise with Mount Sumeru to the left. But then it also moves clockwise, influenced by the Dakshinavrat wind. So how do we understand that it is moving both clockwise and anti-clockwise? So Sukadeva Goswami will explain this later with the help of the analogy of the potter's wheel, and we'll cover it at the time he talks about ants moving on the potter wheel. But conceptually, to understand its relative motion, that if two bodies are in motion, then one is the motion of one body with respect to another, and the second is the motion of the body in a more absolute way. Right. So since the zodiac is also moving and the sun is also moving, but because the zodiacs move faster than the sun, so the sun is moving in anti-clockwise. But if you take the zodiac away, then the sun is moving in a clockwise direction. But this will be explained in much more details later on. Okay, verse 10. When the sun travels from Devadani, the residence of Indra, to Samyamani, the residence of Yamraj, it travels 23.775 million yojanas, which is 190.2 million miles in 15 Ghatikas, which is 6 hours. So Sukdev Goswami is giving an estimation of the speed with which the sun moves. So the distance between Devadani, the residence of Indra, and Samyamani, the residence of Yamraj, is 23.775 million yojanas. Right. So this is essentially 1/4 of the circle. So the circumference of the circle is 95.1 million yojanas. A quarter of it is 23.775, and the sun takes 6 hours to travel this distance. So now you know the speed of the sun, that it is 23.775 over 6 hours. But we also established that the speed is not constant, that there are times when the sun will move faster and the sun will move slower. Okay, verse 11. From the residence of Yamraj, the sun travels to Nimlochani, the residence of Varun. From there to Vibhavari, the residence of moon god, and from there again to the residence of Indra. In a similar way, the moon, along with the other stars and planets, becomes visible in the celestial sphere and then sets and again becomes invisible. So now what is the clockwise path of the sun? And since it is clockwise, you can take any beginning point, but let's assume we take Samyamani, Yamraj's place. From there it goes to Nimlochani, which is Varuna's place. From there it goes to Vibhavari, and then from there it goes to Devadani. Right. So this is the clockwise movement of the sun. With respect to the nakshatra, with respect to the zodiacs, it's moving anti-clockwise. And Sukdev Goswami is now extending, saying the moon, the stars, and the planets rise and set in the same way. Now they will have different specs, right? Their distances will be different, their circumferences will be different, but he's saying notionally you can understand that they're also moving in the same way. So Prabhupada writes in the purport is that the Vedic literature informs us that within this universe there is one sun which is moving. The Western theory that all the luminaries in the sky are different suns is not confirmed in the Vedic literature. Nor can we assume that these luminaries are suns of other universes, for each universe is covered by various layers of material elements. And therefore, although the universes are clustered together, we cannot see from one universe to another. In other words, whatever we see is within this one universe. In each universe, there is one Lord Brahma, and there are other demigods on other planets, but there is only one sun. So Prabhupada is, without directly saying it, is negating some of the conceptions that they have. So some people say that what Bhagavatam describes as the universe is actually the solar system. And when they say that there are unlimited universes, there are unlimited solar systems in the universe. Or sometimes they will say the galaxy is the universe, depending on whatever strikes their fancy. But Prabhupada is making this point that that's not true, because we can see other galaxies, but we cannot see outside a universe. So everything that we can see has to be within our universe. So that's one point he's making. The second point is with respect to the sun. Now, important thing to note here is that Prabhupada says in the purport, and Sukdev Goswami says, there are other luminaries also in the universe. So it's not that the sun is the only effulgent planetary system. There are other, the moon is also a luminary, Dhruva Loka is a luminary. In the Bhuvar Loka, there are millions of luminaries. Some of them are like, they're called, so in the Bhuvar Lok, the Gandharvas, etc., they live in their own planets. So they don't share their planets. The planets are small, that's why they are known as aerial mansions, but they live in their own planets which is illuminated. So the Gandharvas, so those are also moving, and we can see them in the sky as millions and millions of of luminaries. So it's not that sun is the only luminary, but the function of the sun of giving light and heat to the universe is unique to the sun. Nobody else does that. So right from Bhulok to Bhuvarlok to Svargloka, sun is the only planet that is providing light and heat. Now we can see the light of other heavenly bodies, but they're not the source of our day and night. They're not the source of our seasons. Sun is the only source. Now, below the Bhulok, there is no sun. That is why the lower seven planetary system, they're subterranean. They never see the sun. And above the Dhruv there is no sun. Because those are the higher planetary system, they don't care about the sun. They said they can create their own sun, so they don't need the sun. So there's no sun above Dhruv and there's no sun below Bhumandal, and there is no sun beyond the Lokalok mountains. So the ring of mountains that surround Bhumandal that restrict the light of the sun. So if you have to look at the influence of the sun, it is confined within the ring of the Loka mountains from Bhumandal until Dhruvalok. Right? This is the influence of the sun, and sun is the only planet that is providing the light and the heat. Okay, so I feel maybe I should take a break. I know it's a little early, but maybe I should take a little break now and see. This is kind of halfway through the chapter also. To see if there is any questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the class. Couple of questions, Prabhuji. One is the zodiacs, are they only the representations of the heavenly planets, or they are physically existing? Asking this question because you mentioned all the heavenly planets are static with respect to sun. It means the speed of the sun should be in line with the speed of the heavenly planets. And as the zodiacs, we are seeing that like the zodiacs move faster, that makes it appears like sun is doing counterclockwise direction. That is question one, Prabhuji. So how are they really physically existing as
They are, you're right. So both points you made are correct, that yes, the zodiac is physically existing, they are heavenly bodies. Not much description is given as what is happening in zodiac, who lives over there, but the understanding is there's celestial creatures that live there. So it's considered to be like a belt of heavenly planets that are at a particular height from Bhumandal, right? So that's the zodiac, and it's divided into this 12 constellations, which is moving at a certain speed, which is a little faster than the movement of the sun. So when we look from a static perspective, now whenever you talk about motion, it is always relative to the point of observation. So the Acharya Sri Sukdev Goswami is sitting on the Earth planet. A lot of it is describing is from the perspective of Earth. Something they would describe on a more different perspective, but most of the things are describing as if Parikshit is looking up from where he's sitting. So from the Earth, from the Bhumandal perspective, there is a movement of the zodiac and there is a movement of the sun. But when you look at it from a relative perspective, the sun is moving back because the zodiac is moving faster than the sun. Now, this division of the zodiac into 12 houses, I have not heard or seen whether there is any any factual. So is it that actually a certain kind of heavenly bodies are in Taurus or a certain kind of heavenly bodies in Gemini? My understanding is that's mostly notional, that they take the 360 degrees and divide it into 12 of 30 degrees each. But like I said, I haven't heard anywhere either way
Yeah.
that Gemini is a particular kind of heavenly bodies in Gemini or a particular kind of heavenly bodies in Cancer. The focus is mostly as a marker. The sun is moving, and then you need something to mark the movement of the sun.
Yeah.
So then they take these heavenly bodies and they use that as a marker to plot the movement of the sun in the sky. And interestingly, this is one place where um, uh, Vedic astronomy and the material astronomy, there's a lot of resonance there. So in material astronomy also they use the same thing. They use the zodiacs to mark the movement of the sun. So they have this understanding of dividing the sky into, and this was done right from very, very ancient times, that they divided the sky into 12 parts of 30 degrees each, and then they named it. So essentially, how did they get the names? They got the names based on the formation of the stars within
Okay.
these signs, right? So there's another picture that shows that why is something called Taurus? Because the stars there, they form kind of like a bull.
Oh.
Or why is something called Aries, which becomes like a fish there? Now, frankly speaking, you have to exercise your imagination a little bit because it doesn't really look like a fish, but what they do is they draw the line and they show that, okay, this could look like a fish. But it seems to be pretty consistent. That's how the Vedic astronomers also consider the movement of the sky, the sun, and that's how the material astronomers do. Now, one thing important to understand also is that sun does not create time. Right? So generally, we say by the movement of the sun in this constellations, days and nights are happening, seasons are happening, etc. So it's kind of like saying that you have a clock in your house, and the clock is creating time. That when the clock says it's 8 a.m., so the clock created 8 a.m., then it's 9 a.m., it's 9 a.m., it's midnight, it's midnight. Factually speaking, all that the clock is doing is reporting of the time. Right? That's what the sun is doing. That the sun is reporting of the time that's been created by Krishna. And the second thing the sun also does is that it activates the karma chakra. So because of the presence of the sun and the disappearance of the sun, those who are inclined to fruitive activities engage in fruitive activities. So if you look at a situation where there's no sun, it's always dark and cold. So everybody will just be hanging around doing nothing. So there will be no karma. But because the sun creates the days and the nights, so people get up in the day, they work during the day, they take rest in the night. Because it creates the seasons, then there are some seasons when they plant the fields, some seasons when they cultivate the fields. Because it creates years, people get a sense that I'm dying, I have years left. So the whole karma chakra is actually activated because of the movement of the sun. But again, important to understand the sun is not causing it. Yeah, it is caused because of the free will of the jivas, but the sun is a catalyst in creating it.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And one question, Prabhuji. Second question. Uh, the second question, Prabhuji. Uh, like many times I heard like Surya Narayana. Many times I heard like Surya Narayana. Calling sun god as. Because we know that Narayan is Lord Vishnu. That confusion is there. Like why people call like sun god as Surya Narayan, is what connection he has with Narayan.
Prabhupada talks about it. He says Surya Narayan basically means the Surya that is the representative of Narayan. So that's the understanding. When they say Surya Narayan, then they're talking about Surya that is the eye of Narayan, or the Surya that is a representative of Narayan. How is it a representative of Narayan? Because Kal, time is a Kalu Asmina. Krishna says, time I am.
Correct.
And sun is the one that represents the movement of time. So that's how it's said, Surya Narayan. Sometimes I guess people who have different conceptions may call, there are worshippers who worship the sun god as the supreme personality of Godhead. Right? So in the Gayatri mantra, the Om Bhur Swa, there are some interpretation of the Gayatri mantra which basically say the Gayatri mantra is for the glorification of sun. Right? So they essentially chant the Gayatri mantra as a way to worship the sun god. Right? So it's a little bit of the same thing, more of those who have the mentality of demigod worship.
Yeah, I heard that, Prabhuji. Sandhya Vandan, they say that we are offering to sun god kind of.
Yeah. And the Vaishnavas say, it's the sun god that is the eye of Vishnu or the representative of Vishnu, and that is being addressed there.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. The zodiac sign is that also from the Westerners? It's not derived from the Greek philosophy, which is very, very linked to the Vedic philosophy as well.
Okay. Actually, my microphone is a little messed up, Prabhu. Can you repeat the question a little slower?
What I was saying is the zodiac, the Westerners' zodiac, is derived from the Greek philosophy, and the Greek philosophy is derived from Vedic philosophy because they also have sun god like wind god. They have almost everything that we have in our, in our 34 million Devi Devtas. I think they have not 34 million, but a bit less. But they are linked. There is some link there.
There is that, yeah. I mean, there is that understanding that. So the Greeks are the Yavanas, right? The Yavanas that were driven out of Bharatvarsha by the curse of Yati, and they carried with them some semblance of Vedic understanding. They're mostly outside the Vedas, but they carried with themselves some understanding of the Vedas. So you see reflections of Vedas, but distorted there. That's one understanding.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, let's move on to the next verse. Thus the chariot of the sun god, which is Traimaya, or worshipped by the words Om Bhur Bhava Swaha, travels through the four residents mentioned at a speed of 3,400,800 yojanas, which is 27,206,400 miles in Muhurta. So these are just numbers. Obviously, very difficult to remember them. But since Sukdev Goswami is talking about speed and distance, about distance and time, he's also talking about speed. So in 5 verses from 12 to 16, Sukdev Goswami will give a description of the sun's chariot. Right. So here it's understood that the sun travels. So a Muhurta is 48 minutes. So in 48 minutes, it travels 3,400,800 yojanas. So you can do the maths and find out what is the speed per second. But this is an average speed. Right? And he also mentions that that the sun is worshipped as Trimaya. So Trimaya essentially is the worship through Gayatri mantra. So Om Bhura Bhavas Swaha, right? So we were just discussing how the Gayatri mantra is also used in the worship of the sun. And the Vaishnava use the Gayatri mantra to worship Lord Narayan. And the Gayatri mantra, as you know, is more of a template. And the same Gayatri mantra can be used to worship Lord Shiva, can be used to worship Durga Devi. And there are some parts of the mantras that are changed to indicate who the object of the worship is. Okay. Verse 13. The chariot of the sun god has only one wheel, which is known as Samvatsar. The 12 months are calculated to be its 12 spokes. The 6 seasons are the sections of its rim, and the 3 Chaturmasya periods are its 3 sectional hub. One side of the axle carrying the wheel rests upon the summit of Mount Sumeru, and the other side rests upon Manasotra mountain. Affixed to the outer end of the axle, the wheel continuously rotates on Manasotra mountain like the wheel of an oil pressing machine. So Sukadeva Goswami is describing the movement of the chariot of sun god. So unlike a conventional chariot, which has typically 4 wheels, sometimes 2 wheels, the sun god's chariot has only 1 wheel. And this is similar to the chariot that was used by, at least in terms of the wheel, that is used by Prithu Maharaj. So initially when Prithu Maharaj was dividing the Bhumandal by the wheels, so he also had a chariot with only 1 wheel, right? So the sun god's chariot is similar, it has 1 wheel. Now when you have a wheel, then you need to have an axle that connects the wheel to something else. So typically in a car, the one axle of the wheel connects to the other wheel, right? So that's how the wheels are held. Here, the axle of the wheel rests on Mount Sumeru. So Mount Sumeru is at the center. From there, there's an axle. That axle goes all the way to Manasotra mountain. There is a wheel over there, and that wheel essentially is anchored to Mount Sumeru by the axle. And the chariot is situated on this wheel is moving. So many times in picturization, they'll show a chariot, sometimes with 4 wheels, sometimes they'll show hundreds of wheels there, and it's more like people taking artistic liberty. But actually, the sun chariot has only 1 wheel, right? And the wheel is also described as the 12 spokes on it are the 12 months. The 6 sections are the sections of its rib. The rim, the 3 Chaturmasya are the hub, and then there's the axle that is connecting it. So in 522.2, this will be further expanded upon. Okay, verse 14. As an oil pressing machine, this first axle is attached to a second axle, which is 1/4 as long. So it is 3,937,500 yojanas or 31.5 million miles. The upper end of the second axle is attached to Dhruva Loka by a rope of wind. Right? So earlier I had mentioned that how the sun is also connected to Dhruva Loka. So this is how it's connected. So you can consider one axle to be running horizontally, and horizontally it runs to Mount Sumeru. The other axle is running as a hypotenuse of the triangle, as the slanting end of the triangle, and it goes all the way up to Dhruva Loka. Right? So why are there 2 axles? This is to facilitate the movement of the wheel into axis. So later on we'll see that at certain times of the year, using the second axle, Maharaj Dhruva, he withdraws the sun. So that at that time, the sun rises and gets closer to Mount Sumeru. So then the circumference of the rotation of the sun reduces at that time. So that's when the sun is moving north. Right? So that is Uttarayan. And then at some times he will release this axle and the sun moves down south. That is Dakshinaya. Right? And that's when the circumference of the sun becomes larger. So because the sun takes the same time to navigate the circumference, when it moves in a shorter circumference, it moves slower. And when it moves on a far longer, larger circumference, it moves faster. So that's how you get the longer days when it is moving shorter in a shorter circumference, and you get the shorter days when it is moving on a longer circumference. Okay, verse 15. My dear king, the carriage of the sun's god's chariot is estimated to be 3.6 million yojanas, 28.8 million miles long, and 1/4 as wide, 900,000 yojanas or 7.2 million miles. The chariot's horses, which are named after Gayatri and other Vedic meters, are harnessed by Arunadev to a yoke that is also 900,000. Excuse me. That is also 900,000 yojanas wide. This chariot continuously carries the sun god. So on the wheel is a chariot, and the chariot itself is pretty substantive. It is 3.6 million yojanas long and 900,000 million yojanas wide. So that is how we account for the horizontal movement of the sun. That is how we account for. So the sun is basically not fixed on that chariot. Because the chariot itself is so big, the sun is also moving within the chariot. And this 22nd chapter will expand on this notion. Also mentioned over here is that the horses are named after the Gayatri meter, and the charioteer is Arunadev. So Arunadev is a exalted personality. He is mentioned in Mahabharata that Prajapati Kashyap. So he was married to the 13 daughters of Daksha, right? So of them, amongst two sisters, there was a lot of rivalry between Vinita and Kadru. So they both had the same husband, so they were co-wives, they were sisters, but they had rivalry amongst them. So they was always wanting to, like, one man upshift to be better than the other. So both of them prayed, or they tried to please their husband, and Kashyap Prajapati was pleased by both of them. So he asked them to take a boon. So then Kadru said that, may I have 1,000 Dirghadehas. So Kadru's notion was that more is better, because a woman's or a wife's status grows when she has more sons. Right? So she said, may I have 1,000 Dirghadehas. So Dirgha means long bodied, which is essentially serpents. And Vinita, who probably is the smarter of the two, Vinita basically says that I want only 2 sons who are Divya Deha. So Divya Deha means that they have, Divya means divine, they have a divine body. But they should excel the 1,000 sons of Kadru. Right? So Kashyap Munis told them both Tathastu, and he was a little tired by this fighting between the sisters, so then he went away after that. So in due course of time, Kadru, who is the mother of the serpents, she gave birth to 1,000 eggs. And out of the eggs came the Nagas, headed by Vasuki. Anant Shesh is a little separate, but he was born before them. But out of these 1,000 eggs, the eldest was Vasuki. So all these really venomous serpents and snakes came. Vinita, she gave birth to 2 eggs. So Vinita is the mother of the birds. And the eggs were incubating, which means that they were just there for almost 500 years. So Vinita was getting a little concerned because Kadru already had her sons and she was happy. She said, I have 1,000 sons, they're powerful, she was kind of gloating on Vinita. So after waiting 500 years, she got impatient and she broke the egg, one of the uh, 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 the egg. From that egg, Aruna appeared. And because she had broken the egg partially, his body is only partially developed. So Aruna is only developed from the waist up. He does not have anything below, he does not have any legs there. And he was very angry at his mother. So he cursed that because of your competition with your sister, you are impatient. So uh, so he said that for 500 years you will be a slave to your sister, which is probably the really difficult thing for Vinita, because she already had a lot of negative feelings towards Kadru. But he cursed that for 500 years you will be a slave to your sister. But then when my younger brother appears, he will free you from that slavery. So then there is this pastime in Mahabharata how Kadru and Vinita, they have a wager that is the tail of Ucha white or black, and Vinita says white, and which is true, but uh, 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 secretly Kadru, she asks her sons, the snakes, to kind of wrap themselves around the tail, and the tail appears black, or it may be the other way around, that she asked them to wrap, and then looking at the tail, Vinita said black, but then when they went to inspect it, the snakes went away, so it became white. And the wager was that you will be my slave. So because she lost the wager, Vinita became a slave to Kadru, and Kadru basically used to order her around, get her to do menial work. After 500 years, the second egg broke, and then from there appeared Garuda. And Garuda, then as we know that Vinita said this, that she wanted the nectar for her sons. So Garuda goes to Indra's palace, and he fights with Indra, defeats him, gets the nectar, and then this bewilderment happens that the last moment the nectar is switched and taken away, but a drop of the nectar falls, and the sons of Kadru, the snakes, they frantically try to lick that nectar. So it falls on Kushagrash, which is very, very, very sharp. So that's how they cut their tongue. So that's why the snakes have forked tongues. But they get a little bit of the nectar, which, because of the enviousness, becomes poison in them. So Aruna is also the father of two personalities that appear in Ramayana. So this is Sampati and Jatayu, right? So Jatayu, so one is the eagle and the other is the vulture. So Jatayu is the vulture and Sampati is the eagle, and they basically, both in their own way, Jatayu helps by giving up his life and assisting, fighting with Ravan, and Sampati helps by reminding Hanuman about his power. So they are both the sons of both the sons of Aruna. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that the 7 horses yoked to the sun's god chariot are named as Gayatri, Brahati, Ushnik, Jagati, Trishtup, Anushtup, and Pankti. These are the names of the various Vedic meters, designate the horse that carry the sun. So meters essentially is the rhythm. So the one that we are most familiar with is Anushtup, the 32 syllable, 4 lines, 8 syllable each, that is there, and some exposure to Trishtup also, where instead of 8 there are 12 syllables per line there. So, but there are other meters, and these are not the only meters, right? There are many other meters. The Gayatri is again the Om Bhurva Swa meter. So, but in addition to this 7 meters, there are almost unlimited meters, which basically established the melody, how to chant a particular mantra. And in the Vedic mantras, it's important that they should be chanted according to the allocated meter there. Otherwise, they become nishfal. So in the Vedic mantra, there are several injunctions that are given, right? So of course, the mantra itself is given, the meter is specified, the time of the day is specified, the direction is specified, the conception is specified. That's why the Vedic mantras are considered to be very difficult to get them right. Okay, verse 16. Although Arunadev sits in the front of the sun god and is engaged in driving the chariot and controlling the horses, he looks backward towards the sun god. So one of the reasons why Arunadev sits in front of the sun is to shield the because of the sun's effulgence. So the Aruna has a very, very large, even though he does not have a lower part of the body, but his upper part of the body is very, very large. So then he sits in front, he essentially shields the horses and everything in front of the sun from the intense heat of the sun. And because he's a devotee of the Lord, he does not like to show his back to the Lord. So he sits the other way around. And he's constantly chanting mantras to glorify sun god, right? And in front of Aruna, there are other celestial personalities that are also doing the same. The Prabhupada said that he looks backward towards the sun god from his left side. So further detail Prabhupada gives. Verse 17, there are 60,000 saintly persons named Valiklyas, each the size of a thumb, who are located in front of the sun god and who offer him eloquent prayers of glorification. And so in addition, so right in front of the sun god is Aruna, and in front of the Aruna are of course the horses, but there is also these sages called the Valiklyas. And I was checking my notes. I thought I had something about who they are and where they come from. They're mentioned in the Mahabharata in at least two places that I remember. One is that they curse Indra. That I think because they're very small, I think once they fall into a small pond, or more like a puddle, and because they're so small, they're all like struggling to get out of it. And then Indra sees it and he starts laughing. So they get upset and they curse Indra. I do not recollect what the curse was. And the second time, if I remember, is that once they were suspended upside down on a tree, performing austerity, and Garuda happens to sit on the branch of that tree. And because of his weight, that branch breaks and the sages, they fall. So they get upset and they curse Garuda. Again, I don't remember what that curse are. But if any of you know anything about the Valakyas, you can send it to me later on. I'd definitely like to add that to my notes. Okay, verse 18. Similarly, 14 other saints, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, and demigods, who are divided into groups of two, assume different names every month and continuously perform different ritualistic ceremonies to worship the Supreme Lord as the most powerful demigod, Surya Dev, who holds many names. Right, so Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, Devas, they form into groups of 2, 7, and 14, and they assume different names for each month. So assuming different names essentially means that different set of Gandharvas will come, different set of Apsaras will come, and elsewhere it is given in more details that in this month, the Gandharvas are known by this name, the Apsaras are known by this name, and the sages are known by this name. So it's a very elaborate ritualistic ceremony to glorify the sun as he travels around the universe. So Prabhupada writes that worshipping the most powerful demigod Surya, the Gandharvas sit in front of him, the Apsaras dance before the chariot, the Nisacharas follow the chariot, the Panangas decorate the chariot, the Yakshas guard the chariot, and the saint called the Valikilyas surround the sun god and offer prayers. The 7 groups of 14 associates arrange the proper times for regular snow, heat, and rain throughout the universe. Okay, we come to the last verse of the chapter. My dear king, in this orbit through Bhumandal, the sun god traverses a distance of 95.1 million yojanas or 760.8 million miles at a speed of 2000 yojanas and 2 kroshas, which is 16,004 miles in 1 moment. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the 21st chapter. And can pause here and see if there is any comments or questions.
Like you said, Prabhu, we had to have a clean slate so that we don't confuse about the movement of the sun with the wind spread. And
We have to, we have to put that aside, at least for the while we are listening to it, we have to put it aside and consider this model. And the most convincing aspect of the model is that how everything is explained in a justifiable way. Right? It's not explained that somehow it happens. That's why Sukdev Goswami gives all these times and distances, because the astronomers can then use these times and distances and calculate it and use it to determine the lengths of the day and the night, which is what is essentially a lot of what Jyotish Shastra is. That using these days and times, they calculate the movement of the sun in different constellations. They predict the eclipses, etc. So all that is done using the model that Sukdev Goswami has given them.
Fascination. Thank you.
Prabhuji, one comment, Prabhuji. It looks so auspicious and fascinating too, to hear the movement of sun and the people surrounding him, worshipping him. So far it always appears to me that he is doing all by himself, like that. But it's not like a thankless job, but it is everybody is honoring. And so next time when we go out and see sun, this is something probably we will remember. It's auspicious to see sun god. We usually don't remember that. We tend to forget because of the heat.
You're right. You're right. Right. And elsewhere, these things are described much more elaborately. The names are given, the who are the apsaras who come. Here it is not mentioned, but there are sages also. One of the Saptrishis is also glorifying the sun. So the Saptrishi's name is also given. This time this Saptrishi is, this time that Saptrishi. Right? So we get a sense of how exalted the position of Suryadev is.
Yeah, pretty much we can imagine that all are around him when we see the sun. Only thing we are not seeing, but very pictorial, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. So if nothing else, we'll stop over here. Thank you very much. Next week, we will complete the next chapter, which is actually a little smaller, 17 verses. And I'm thinking maybe does it make sense to do 2 chapters? The chapters are small, but we'll see. I don't want to be too much of a rush also. But at least we'll complete the next chapter. Okay. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः Anant Koti Vaishnavind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.